Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I'm starting a new project today. I'm not completely sure how I'm going to do it, although I've got some ideas. So rather than just show you the sort of finished process, I thought I'd bring you along for the journey right from the beginning. You might find it interesting. I wanted to come up with some way of using fabric scraps if you don't like sewing. Initially, because I was trying to think of ways that people who love the look of those Bazaar scrap packs I'm always raving about, but don't sew, might be able to, because there's lots of different things you can do that don't necessarily involve sewing. So I have all sorts of ideas to try. This is the first one I'm having a go at, and it's a fabric collage without sewing. It's going to be with different kinds of glue. So let me take you to the desk and show you what I've been looking at. So I was thinking, I'd quite like to do a couple of reasonable size collages, but you could also make this much simpler and smaller and just do it as a small card. And when I was looking for inspiration, I happened across this card that this was in my last box from Johnny, this lovely anemone. I love these flowers anyway. I thought that would actually be perfect. You could actually do it small as a card size like this, or you could do it a bit bigger. So I went online and found some pictures of anemones. I love this one, and I've got a lot of pink silk fabrics. What I'm looking at is, this is what I pulled out from my Bazaar scrap packs. All different kinds, mostly silks there because I've got quite a lot of silks, but I've got some fine cottons as well. Of course you can join in with these projects. You don't have to go out and buy a Bazaar pack. If you've got loads of fabric scraps already to use what you've got. Don't feel like you've got to go and get something specially. But if you have got these packs, or you want an excuse to get these packs, but you don't know what to do with it, then hopefully this will help. Got a little bit of black there because I thought it might be nice for the background, and some green. So possibly I'll put that background on first. With the image, what I did was simplified it. I used a bit of graphite transfer paper and just transferred the basic outlines of the image onto a piece of paper like that, and I kind of simplified it. If anybody's interested and you don't want to or don't feel able to do this bit yourself, I'm very happy. Just let me know in the comments to this video and I'll make this image available. And then, because some of the fabrics are quite flimsy, and one of the questions people have said, one of the things that issues that people have raised is that the silk's quite sort of flimsy to handle. And yes, it can be, and that's one of the lovely things about it. If you look at this, there's this little tiny scrap here. Yeah, I mean, it's quite sheer, I can see my hand through it. But if you're applying it, I'm going to use a matte medium. One of the great things is that, like tissue paper, it's going to just kind of almost blend into the paper and show, you'll be able to see layers of what's underneath, like a translucent paint. So if we think about using the fabric almost as paint, the fact that it's sheer is an advantage. But for some of this, I want it to have a little bit more body, so I've also got some of this stuff, which is a medium weight fusible interfacing. So it's a non-woven, almost like a fabric, but it's not woven. It's textured on one side, smooth on the other. The textured side is little tiny dots of glue. So you put this to the wrong side of the fabric and you iron it on. You have to be careful not to get your iron on this glue side of the fusible interfacing. So this makes it a really, even, it's good for if you're going to stitch into it. I used it in my Celebrating 61 quilt, and I might have used it in some of the boho bunting, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's once you've ironed it on, it's still very flexible, so you can stitch into it very easily, and it still maintains its sheerness. You can still actually see my fingers through there, and you've still got that lovely luster of silk and the gorgeous colours, but you've just got it's a little bit more stable, a little bit more body to it. It's just a little bit easier to handle. So I've got two choices. I can either just take a sheet of this and just iron it onto the back of a piece of silk and cut the shapes I want from it. But what I'm going to try doing, so this is where I'm bringing you along for the experimental phase of this project, and this might not work out. I'm going to try cutting, because I've traced the image again onto this fusible interfacing. This is glue side up, and I'm going to try cutting these shapes out and ironing just the shape onto the piece of silk and then cutting it out. I'm going to have a go at that now. I've got the iron set up behind me. One of the other things I fancy having, or a couple of other things I fancy having a go at, if I can get this collage thing to work, is a landscape. I think that would work with all kinds of textures of fabric. The more textures the better, actually. And you could also, you know, rather than, I might do a landscape in perhaps as an art journal page, but you could also do it onto another piece of fabric and then stitch into it, you know, if you are into stitching. But this particular project, I'm aiming at people who aren't into stitching at all. For me, if I was doing this project just for myself, I'd probably do a mixture of the two. I also want to try Inktense pencils and other media over the top. And by using the matte medium to apply the collaged pieces of fabric, I can use other media over the top. So I need to kind of do, and this is going to be quite a, you know, a laborious process, because I'm going to have to cut these pieces one at a time and then pop them back in place so that I know what's what. I could pop them into place. So this is going to be ironing out the process. And then after that, I've got another one. Let me just put this to one side a minute. This is another image that I've found, and you can see I've traced over the bare outlines of it. Ended up with that, and then I've traced that onto my fusible interfacing. One of the things that I think is one of the reasons I picked these particular flowers as my inspiration is that the centres are so interesting. I can use different textures and I can use some of the other doodads that you get in the Bazaar packs, or that you might have lying about, broken bits of jewellery, all kinds of things, little beads and things, threads, ends of threads and stuff could be used to create all these different textures. You could even roll up little bits of flimsy fabric. The tiniest scraps that you don't think you've got any use for at all could be used to create some of these lovely textures. That's my big plan anyway. And I found some other flower pictures too. That's another kind of anemone. I think it's a Japanese one they call it. And cone flowers, I think, are lovely. They come in so many different colours. Echinacea, I think, is another word for them. I'm sure my mum used to grow these as a medicinal thing. Yeah, so there's all sorts of... and then if you wanted to do a smaller, simpler one, just on a greetings card or something, you could just do a heart or a fish or a house. You know, there's all kinds of different things you could do. Right, so I'm just going to experiment now and put this on. Say I wanted... Let's use this piece of fabric, seeing as it jumped out at me. I'm just going to place it on there. I've put it glue side down to the fabric, and I will probably pop the iron on it just briefly. I'm using steam in my iron. You see different kinds of advice as to whether you should use steam or not. In my experience, it doesn't seem to make a massive amount of difference. But I'm going to quickly just tack it on that way, and then I'll turn it over and do the other side as well. And depending on how the silk's holding up, because you need a fairly hot iron with a fusible interfacing, have a look at the instructions that come with yours. I don't want to go too hot with the silk fabric. I've got to be a bit careful, so I'm going to have an experiment. I've got the iron on my silk setting. We just need to see if that's hot enough to apply the fusible interfacing. There we go. So that should now be stuck to my fabric. Yeah, so what I'm hoping is that I can now cut round this. I've also got several slow stitching projects making use of these Bazaar scrap packs. So the Bazaar scrap packs, while I'm cutting this, I'll just say the company is called Bazaar. They make up these packs. They're £14.50 each, and you get a whole, I will leave a link to them, you get a whole mixture of reclaimed fabrics and trims and little doodads in there. They're mostly natural fabrics. You do get the odd few synthetics, but they're nice synthetics, you know. But it's mostly cottons and silks in different weights. And I love that they're reclaimed fabrics, and I love the ethics that Bazaar work by. And when you're ordering, there's a bit at the end, there's a bit where you put promo, where it says promo code, and there is where you put Bazaar free postage, and you get free postage on orders £30 or over. And then there's a bit underneath that says, I don't know, in there you put Arty Farty Annie Treat. I'll put it up on the screen here, and if you do that, they'll send you a little extra something or other with your order. It could be anything, depends on what they've got and what you're ordering. But yeah, just a little extra treat, which is always nice. There we go. So that's the first petal of my flower gone in. I think that's pretty successful, actually. What I'm going to use is these canvases from a couple of weeks ago, where I had to go marble pouring, and it was a disaster. I did it on the live stream. It was entertaining, but it was not successful. So I've just done a quick coat of gesso over the top of that to like knock it back a little bit. But I'm going to apply fabric to the whole background, I think. I could paint it, you know. I did consider just painting the background black, but to let I want the true colours of these lovely silks to come through, and I think they'll come through better with white behind them, because the fusible interfacing itself is also transparent. So if there was black behind them, I think it would darken them. I want them to be vibrant. So I think I'm going to work my way through, stop filming this for a minute, work my way through till I've got all of these shapes done and it kind of all put together. This is quite a nice simple one. The sunflower's got a lot more petals, so I'll start with this one because it's going to be more straightforward. For these bits, I'll probably just cut some background. I'll probably layer them up. I'll cut one whole piece this size, then the smaller one, then a smaller one, just layer them up, and then I will put beads and things to give them texture. I will glue on separately later on. That'll be much further down the process. So I'm going to stop now and work my way through and do that with all of them. I think that was easy enough to do. If I thought I was going to be cutting a lot of petals out of the same piece of fabric, it would probably be easier just to get the sheet of this, iron it onto the back of the fabric in one go, transfer the image in one go and cut the petals out. Even if I was going to use two different fabrics, I could probably do that and cut some of the petals out of one piece and some out of another piece. You could still use the fabric, it would just have this on the back. So, but I think for this, because I'm going to be using different little pieces for different little petals, I'm gonna do it this way. And all of these scraps, even tiny ones like that, are all going to be used in some of the other projects that I've got. So don't throw, if you're doing these, find a little bag or something, a little basket, something to put even these tiny scraps in. Don't throw anything away. Not yet. My aim is not to throw anything out of those bags away. Okay, I'm going to stop recording now and work my way through doing that. Right, I've finished ironing all those pieces and I've sort of jigsawed them all together again. And now I'm going to transfer them onto here. I've used some graphite transfer paper just to put my image onto the canvas. I'm hoping I haven't got to shut the window and that you can see well enough. It seems such a shame to shut out the sunshine. I'm going to use this matte gel. I'm nearly out of it. I must get some more, and a rubbishy old paintbrush because I will ruin it. You could just as well, I am going to have to shut the curtain. Yes, I think I was saying you could just as well use PVA or something. I just like this. I like this stuff. I like the finish of it. I like how I can work over the top of it as well. So, right, let's get this black centre on first. Seem to have some colour in my brush. I don't think that's going to be a problem. So I'm just putting a little coat of it on the canvas, and then some more over the top just to make sure it's all really nicely down. And these will just be like a background. I'll be building up more texture at the top of this area anyway. And okay, if I put say I put a layer of transparent gesso over the top of this, and I could go in with coloured pencils. That could be really fun. So I could still do that, but I could use paint markers or paints, Inktense pencils, all kinds of things over the top of this. So some of the, as I say, you could do it with PVA, but that can leave a bit of a shiny finish. It just depends on what you want to do, really. Right, where shall I go next? I think I might go with the outer ones next. Whatever I was doing last with this must have involved the colour yellow by the look of it. I'm not going to worry about those pencil outlines showing. That was just for guidance, really. I've put some pieces of cotton in here, not just the silk, just get some sort of difference in the texture and that, just to make it more interesting. Hopefully that'll stay stuck down nice and smooth. And ideally I don't want to end up with any gaps between them, but I can fill them with paint or pencil or whatever later on if I need to. I'm sure it would be possible to be much more accurate than I'm being, but I am lazy by nature. I'll speed through this now and come back and see you when I'm ready for the next stage. Right, I've finished sticking all my pieces on. I'm pretty happy with how that's coming out, and it's definitely different from if I just painted this same thing. I wouldn't have got all the little bits of patterning and the sort of texture and everything that I've got here using the fabrics. So I mean, you could do a similar thing using cut out paper, but then I just don't think you wouldn't get the same feel to it, but it would still be actually quite interesting to do in paper. Yeah, so if you want to try something like this and you haven't got scraps of fabric, you could try it in paper. And now I've got this matte kind of finish all over. You can hear from using the matte medium. So now I can go over the top with pencils, or I'm going to try some of these. I think I've got a paint, anything. You could use all sorts of things over the top of this, whatever you've got, whatever you want to use. I kind of feel like I wanted to get, the look of the background a bit like this one, but with more contrasted dark and light. So I've got quite a lot of the dark. I feel like I want more light, but I haven't got any more light bits of fabric to use. So I'm just wondering about using a couple of these Neo Colour 2. These are wax crayons, but they're water soluble. I've got this really limey green, which I think would be a nice contrast against the pink, and could add some light to my background. So I'm going to try a bit of that, and I might end up using some of the pink to add some highlights. I'm going to keep these out. And then the other thing I've got is this Inktense pencil. So this is it's water soluble, but it's not a watercolour. It's ink in the form of a pencil. So when you activate it with water, the vibrancy of the colour comes out, and it becomes permanent once it's all activated with water. But this isn't colour. This is just Chinese inks, which is like a deep black, and I'm going to use that to add some outlines. So we'll see how it goes. This is, like I said at the beginning, this is all completely an experiment. I'm fairly happy with how it's turned out. Not quite as I had it in my head, but I've enjoyed doing it. And I think rather than do another flower now, I'll finish this and that'll be the end of this video. And then next time I'm going to try a bit of a landscape, like sunset over the mountains kind of landscape. What I'm hoping I can do is just use this pencil to give a bit of an outline to my petals. I don't have to activate this with water, but what I'm thinking is if I do, it will sort of blend. I can blend out that outline a bit.